Welcome to the Mid-Atlantic Championship Podcast, the podcast that travels back into time to review classic episodes of Jim Crockett Promotions' Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling as it appears on the NBC Universal streaming service Peacock, as well as internationally on the WWE Network. I am Mike Sempervive, joined by Roman Gomez, and we welcome you along on our voyage in reviewing these classic shows. We have social media on several platforms, although the Twitter account is the most active. Just search at Mid-Atlantic Pod and look for our logo. And if you want to follow along with us but don't have access to Peacock or the network, you can still do so by the way of David Taub's write-ups of these old Mid-Atlantic shows, available at the mighty midatlanticgateway.com. Today in episode 37, we take a look at the television that was taped on Wednesday, September 29th, 1982 at the WPCQ Studios, Channel 36 in Charlotte, North Carolina, and began airing in local markets beginning that weekend of Saturday, October 2nd. And as I bring in Roman Gomez here, we have a lot of explaining to do, not only with what we're going to be finding out today about the NWA World Tag Team Championship Tournament, but also where we've been and what's gone on in all of this time since you've heard a show with both of us. Roman, how the hell are you?
Oh, man, what a crazy roller coaster last year. I think it's been for a lot of people. For me, I know you've been slammed with stuff, Mike, but one thing I did want to say, I wanted to thank everybody out there for the support. I went to the gathering in July, the convention there, and there were people that knew us. There were people that liked our show, the email, the support, the instant messages. Thank you guys for bearing with us. We know it's been a while, but we appreciate the support. And to answer your question, Mike, I'm doing better. I'm finally working some. Life's getting a little bit back to normal, and I'm just happy to be doing the podcast again. This is amazing therapy. It's good to talk to you, and thank you again, everybody, for your support.
Yeah, I'm working less, which is enabling me to do this podcast. So that is working out very nicely here as everything dovetails together to get us back to doing these shows. We have not done a show together since Butch Reed died back in February. That is the last time we did a show. And a lot has happened since then. And I do want to mention, too, because I know everybody blows up Roman on Facebook, and he's got to field a bunch of questions, which is tough to do when I'm incognito, and it can be a pain. But look, at Mid-Atlantic Pod and my personal account, at Sempervive. I'm sorry if on the at Sempervive account I've already blocked you. From something way back when. It's going to happen. Just let me know on the Mid-Atlantic podcast one, and maybe I'll unblock you. But the bottom line is, for most of the information about the show, Twitter is the best way to go. One, I hate Facebook, and also it's just very easy for me because I have to do so much functioning on Twitter to get that out there. So at Mid-Atlantic Pod, and another reason you want to do that is obviously all of the things that I do on there, like On This Day in JCP TV History, where we have some old clips up there from the past. As we record this show today on October 30th, 1977, we have Ole Anderson up there talking about him and Gene setting up to face Ric Flair and Greg the Hammer Valentine tonight at the Greensboro Coliseum, titles versus hair. And you get some information tidbits and some funny stuff up there as well, too. So at Mid-Atlantic Pod is really what we use the most over there on the Twitter machine, Roman. But the last time we did a show, there were a whole bunch of things taking place in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. Roddy Piper had turned into a good guy. We've had Jimmy Valiant get his music destroyed by Joe LeDuc. And not only that, lose the NWA Mid-Atlantic television title. And we've got the House of Humperdink all over TV. And, oh yeah, we had that incident on the last show where Don Kernodle was supposed to be with Private Jim Nelson and facing off in a tag team match, but Bob Caudle let us all know that there was a telegram sent from Tokyo, Japan, with Sergeant Slaughter summoning Don Kernodle over there. So that's where we leave off as we come in to October 2nd, 1982.
I like how they try to tie that in. Of course, though years later we can read between the lines and look back and know that, it was basically a cover-up or, that it was a smoke screen, but at least they tried to tie the episode and the storyline together.
They did the best that they could, and, if you actually had WTBS Channel 17 out of Atlanta on the satellite dish at the time, or on your burgeoning cable system, you would know that Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen were claiming the World Tag Team Championship down in Atlanta, but Ole Anderson came up, worked the show, dropped the belts off, and they stopped referring to themselves as the World Tag Team Champions. And in fact, the National Tag Team Championship came back and got a little bit of life with, if I'm not mistaken, the Moondogs and the Freebirds and the Samoans, the Wild Samoans that were down there as well too. And with the World Tag Team Championships now coming back to Mid-Atlantic, that means the Mid-Atlantic Tag Team Championship, as we will discuss in the upcoming weeks, will once again become invisible, as they had for quite some time while the World Tag Team Championships were in the area. We start off the show with Bob Caudle at the desk, and he doesn't waste any time. He gives us the rundown, and then he throws it to Sergeant Slaughter and just Don Kernodle, our new NWA World Tag Team Champions.
Also, Greg Valentine and Joe LeDuc together in a tag team match. We're going to see Jack Briscoe and Mike Rotundo together, also in a tag team match right here. The new World Tag Team Champions, Sergeant Slaughter and Don Kernodle.
That's right. I was suspended. I was fined. I had nothing else to do but go and enter myself in the World Tag Team title over in Tokyo, Japan. Now, there were such great stars as Jesse Ventura, Adrian Adonis, the Samoans. There was Ole Anderson and Stan Hansen. There was all kinds of the greatest wrestlers in the world. And I got myself on the telephone and I said, Don Kernodle, get over here quick because we got a chance to be the world title champions. And we've got it. The World Championships. We're the best in the world. There's all kinds of champions. There might be international champions. There might be guys imitating their world champions. But these are the originals. We beat the Giant Baba and Inoki. Antonio Inoki, the man who wrestled Muhammad Ali. We beat those two Japanese to the inch of their life. And my partner, not anymore, Private Kernodle, but Don Kernodle took the deciding fall with his flying cannon. Tell him about it.
That's exactly right. This is a lot of gold right here. A lot of gold. That means we're the best in the world. Not the best in the Mid-Atlantic area, but the best in the world. That makes everybody else underdogs. Underdogs. And that's exactly what we intend to do. Make examples out of all you underdogs. Right, Sergeant?
All right, fans. We're going to see them in action. We're going to see how great they are when we come back right after this time.
And there we hear from our new NWA World Tag Team Champions, Sergeant Slaughter and Don Kernodle, no longer Private Kernodle. He stepped up to having a first name again, teaming up with Sergeant Slaughter. They went over to Tokyo, Japan, Roman, faced off against Antonio Inoki, and if I'm not mistaken, the Great Bubba.
Yeah, when I heard that, I had to kind of chuckle. And for those of you that aren't real familiar with Japanese wrestling, Giant Baba was always an All Japan guy, and Inoki was a New Japan guy. So the thought of those two teaming together just to go after the NWA World titles made me chuckle. And I've got lots of DVDs from Japan, and I just couldn't picture Baba and Inoki teaming together to go after Slaughter and Kernodle for the NWA World Tag titles. But it did make the titles seem a little more prestigious, that they had to go all the way to Japan to win them and then bring them back to America, So there was that cachet of that, but it just kind of made me chuckle, the thought of Baba and Inoki teaming together.
Yeah, and the reason probably you mentioned those names are, with the exception of Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito, Mr. Fuji, of course, being from Hawaii, what other Japanese wrestlers could catch the fancy and the attention of American fans? Would be probably the only two that were ever written up in magazines, and that would be the owners of their respective promotions, Baba and Inoki, who, as Roman mentioned, were actually bitter rivals, and that's why we had All Japan and New Japan. But it is an amazing thought, even though Giant Baba, even at that point, certainly past his prime. Very interesting, the thought of Inoki, Slaughter, Baba, and Kernodle in there with the great work that they could do and the massive popularity of Inoki and Baba. You can imagine what that match actually could have done inside of the Budokan or something like that. I'll take that matchup.
It would have been fun to see, definitely.
So Slaughter and Kernodle are also in there for our first match to kind of show off their wares against King Parsons and Mike Davis, and our referee for the day is Stu Schwartz, and our Mid-Atlantic champion, Paul Jones, joined Bob on the desk where he would stay for the duration of the show. Whether that is a benefit or a distraction for you all depends on your opinion of number one Paul Jones, who could almost make any situation about himself, which fits in perfectly when you call yourself number one. But the match was made to establish Slaughter and Kernodle as a team. They spent equal time battering both guys. Biggest thing to come out of it to me was the creation of the Slaughter cannon clothesline from the second rope that Kernodle used and that Slaughter had mentioned, Roman, earlier on in the interview.
Yes, that was a good finishing maneuver for Kernodle to use. And like you alluded to earlier, now he is no longer a private. You know, he's worked his way up through the ranks. He's Don Kernodle, one half of the NWA World Tag Team Champion.
There wasn't a whole lot, I think, to really talk about when it comes to this match other than that, Roman. Was there anything that really stuck out to you?
No, not so much as the match itself, but just the opponents. It's kind of fun as a, longtime wrestling fan to see Parsons with a different look. He had the more traditional hairstyle and to see Mike Davis, every time I see Mike Davis, I can't help but think of the Dusty Rhodes, impersonation he did. So just to see those two in kind of a different role was, as a longtime fan, was kind of fun just to see them go against Slaughter and Kernodle.
And it's another example too, because with the names we're going to mention on this show, it doesn't scratch the surface with who was really in the company at the time. But when you look at the names, even the ones that are taking losses on this show, it's just amazing the amount of talent that Mid-Atlantic had pumping through it at the time. But we will get to the end of the match and the premiere of the Kernodle cannon, which also would be the Slaughter cannon as well too. But we'll take a listen to the end of the match here where Don Kernodle finishes off Mike Davis.
An effort on the part of Davis. Clothesline. Again across that rope this time on the throat.
That's beautiful.
Now Slaughter hooks the leg. One.
That's beautiful. The way
Sergeant he didn't try to pin him right there. He pulled him up off of the mat. He wasn't satisfied with the punishment already. Look at that cannon coming off of the corner.
Beautiful.
Don Kernodle out of the corner with a cannon. And Davis is still out in the center of the ring. And Paul, he took a tremendous amount of punishment from the champions, Sergeant Slaughter and Don Kernodle. Watch a part of the action right here in slow motion. Slaughter had him pinned. Had the leg hooked, he just dropped it, let it go, picked him up, made the tag, and held him here for Kernodle. Now watch this coming out of the corner.
That's beautiful teamwork.
The cannon right here of Kernodle puts him away for good. It's all over now. Excellent. With our winners, Sergeant Slaughter, Don Kernodle, the World Tag Team Champion.
So there we hear the end of the match. Slaughter and Kernodle get the victory over King Parsons and Mike Davis. And with new bad guy tag team champions, what would be perfect? A pair of Marines, a pair of ugly guys. What would be the perfect contrast to that? Well, it would probably look like Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. And there were no bones made about the fact that Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood were getting back together to go after Slaughter and Kernodle. And we will hear from Steamboat and Youngblood later in the show, Roman. But first, we get them against Ken Timms and Ben Alexander. Steamboat and Youngblood, already an established commodity in the past, but Steamboat went in the singles when Youngblood headed to the Pacific Northwest to get into it with Buddy Rose and everybody up there. And when Youngblood returned, he was in different teams with guys like Johnny Weaver and Jake Roberts and Porkchop Cash. And so this match was really to reintroduce them as a team, which people hadn't seen since, 1980, 79 to 1980, when Steamboat and Youngblood were multiple-time tag team champions after Paul Jones had turned on Ricky Steamboat and started teaming up with Baron von Raschke. They went to battle with Steamboat and Youngblood, and then Steamboat and Youngblood went to war with Gene Anderson's army of Ray Stevens and Greg Valentine and Jimmy Snuka, and after that, they went their separate ways, and that was it. But we saw Jay Youngblood come back earlier on in the year, get a Mid-Atlantic Tag Team title reigns that we talked about on the show, and now here he is back with Steamboat again.
Steamboat and Youngblood were just such a dynamic team. They had the fluidity, the teamwork, they had the look. They were the perfect opponents for somebody like Slaughter and Kernodle, the kind of rough, tough veterans, and to see Steamboat and Youngblood back together again, it was good, and they did a lot of exciting stuff in this match.
Absolutely, and this basically, I mean, we said it last week, or the last episode about the show that took place in the previous week, that we are now on the road to Greensboro, and how great that is for us, for you as listeners, because history has already indicated to us that no matter what happens in your favorite wrestling promotion, the greatest tag team cage match of all time is Steamboat and Youngblood against Slaughter and Kernodle. But, Steamboat and Youngblood, as always, a lot of offense for their opponents. And Ken Tim's Ben Alexander, Tim's still a young guy at this point. Ben Alexander, quite seasoned at this point. Wasn't any offense that you thought that Steamboat and Youngblood were in trouble with. But just, once again, another example of how great they are athletically and how good they can make their opponents look, Roman.
Yes, and I liked the moves that Steamboat and Youngblood would do that made them look like a team instead of two individuals just thrown together. There was one spot in the match where Steamboat lifts Youngblood around the waist so he can kick his opponent. And then there was a real cool spot where Steamboat grabbed the top rope and slingshotted Youngblood into the rope, or over the ropes into the ring to do a splash. And it looks very good, very crisp, and they are a phenomenal tag team. And like you mentioned with the road to Greensboro, there's some great stuff coming down the road.
Absolutely. Getting back to doing the classic moves that they did as a team, and we're going to hear from Steamboat and Youngblood a little bit later on. I didn't cut any audio from this match, but Jay won the match for the team by delivering the two chops on Alexander, the one to the chest, which knocked Alexander down, then Jay bounded off the ropes and delivered one down to his chest and got the 3 count. Then, in lieu of local promos, we got a little bit of filler time with one of my favorites, Jim Dalton and his man Juan Reynoso, also known as Juan Reynosa, the future Terrace Bulba, who only has so much gas in the tank before he has to pitch it back. Ain't that right, Dalton?
Fans are ringside right now. We're going to watch these two in action in just a moment. Jim Dalton, Juan Reynoso. Jim, you and Juan, I tell you, you got a pair of real tough ones in there.
Let me tell you something right now. Anytime you get in that ring, you've got a pair of tough ones, brother. You can't take anybody for granted when you're up there in that square circle right now. But my good friend right here, Juan Reynoso, a man who's wrestled all over the world and was Mexico champion at one time. I'm not calling him an ex-champion because once you're a champion, you're always a champion.
That's right, dude. That's right. I've been a champion in my country, and I'm going to stay a champion. And Briscoe and Rotundo, when we get up there, we're going to show you what me and Dalton can do tonight. And we're going to get down and mean some business.
All right, well, you're talking about champion. You're talking about you a champion. Hey,
let's right.
Just don't overlook Jack Briscoe's championships either.
That's right. Man's a champion, too. Okay? He's a man, great wrestler, just like Dalton here is also, too. But I'll tell you one thing. We're going to work him out good tonight and anywhere else. Ain't that right, Dalton? Ain't that right?
All time, brother. Let me tell you something, Jack Briscoe. You were one of the greatest champions. Like I say, when you're a champion, you're always a champion. But any champion can be defeated, and you're fixing to be defeated tonight in this ring, you and Rotundo.
I was going to say that. Wait, don't overlook this young man who is very, very impressive. Here's a guy who's got it all. Outstanding body, got youth. This Mike Rotundo. He's just a tremendous individual in the ring.
But he ain't got brains. The man ain't got no brains. And we're going to. This is what we got up there here. We got the brains. We are going to destroy him in there. We're going to pin him. Ain't that right? We're going to put his shoulders down on the mat. As right as Jack, too. Jack, we'll get up there, we'll pin his pants down. Ain't that right, Dalton?
All time, brother. Let me tell you something like my partner Reynoso said right now. You can have a good body. You can be strong. But, brother, if you ain't got no brains to go with it, you don't have nothing. You got to be able to think out there. Rotundo, that's your fault. You can't think. Briscoe, you've got something on your shoulders because you're going to have to carry the load, brother. And you're looking at two mules that can pull the wagon.
How about Rotundo? Rotundo, who's an amateur champ. He's got the brains up there.
Hey, we're professionals, brother. Let's forget this amateur champ and all this. You're in up here. You're in for the money. You're a professional. You have to be able to use your brain. You have to be able to do anything that you can to beat a man in that ring right there. You don't have no official up there saying, don't hit that man. Don't do this to the man. Rotundo, you remember that right now. Man.
Well, ain't that right, Roman?
That's right, Mike. You know, you and I have alluded to earlier, you know, in previous episodes about how we like Jim Dalton. And one of the things I do like about Dalton is the confidence he has in his interviews. He seems very believable, and there's something about him that seems very credible. So when he talks, it's more than just a regular interview where somebody's trying to fill time. It's like he's got a point to prove.
And while everybody else is watching local promos, we are warned that we are getting another tag match. But unlike the first two tag matches, this one is going to be serving several purposes. One, it's more of a learning excursion for Mike Rotundo, who is gaining experience and teaming up with Jack Briscoe against Dalton and Reynoso. But also a way to push some storylines as well. A little bit to do with Dory Funk Jr., but much more to do with Paul Jones, who had recently taken the Mid-Atlantic Championship off of Jack Briscoe, and also would be starting to fend off Mike Rotundo, who would be going after him as well, too, which led to Paul Jones really giving his opinion later on in the show when it came to a Dory Funk Jr. match in which Mike Rotundo ended up getting involved in. But this match, again, much like the previous matches, I didn't cut any audio from it. Relatively pedestrian, as it was just to go ahead and get Mike Rotundo a little bit more over and to further the storylines for the people at home. What did you think about this match, Roman?
It was okay. Rotundo was able to hit the airplane spin into a Samoan drop, which later on he would use as a move called the stock market crash when he was Michael Wall Street. But yeah, it was just a kind of basic match. Nothing really stood out on this contest.
No, not at all. And, much like what happened with Slaughter and Kernodle, the old veteran, Jack Briscoe, really could have gotten the victory, but made sure to tag in Rotundo so he could hit his finish for the pin. And after that, we got a set of promos from the good guys, Jimmy Valiant, Ricky Steamboat, Jay Youngblood, and Chief Wahoo McDaniel. And unfortunately for Chief Wahoo McDaniel, as we'll get to later on in the show, he is still fixated on an old opponent and should probably be more worried about a new one, whereas Jimmy Valiant is still very upset with Joe LeDuc, and it's driving him crazy.
Fans with us at ringside right now, the Boogeyman.
There's no music left, brother. Without music, I can't function. I can't make it. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I can't do nothing. LeDuc, I'm gonna kill you. Kill you. Kill you.
I tell you, Rick Steamboat.
You know something? Week
Jay
after week,
Youngblood.
Jay and myself have been getting up here and telling everybody that we're trying to get together. We're trying to iron out the wrinkles in our tag team combination. It's taken us a long
You
time.
guys look great.
We were pretty good out there tonight. I've got to say
Yeah.
this. That's right. We're a bona fide tag team combination right here and now. We hear that Sergeant Slaughter and Don Kernodle came all the way back from Tokyo with the world tag belts. I'd like to congratulate them. That's fine and dandy. But Jay and myself were out to get them back.
That's right, Rick. I'll tell you what. Like Rick said, we'd like to congratulate them for bringing them all the way from Tokyo, Japan, back here in our backyard. We're going to give it our 110% and hoping that these people here, Rick, will support us like they used to before. Like I said, we got a couple of rusty spots, but we're going to smooth those out, and we're going to give it
Just
all
a matter of
Right.
time.
And good luck to you fellows. Chief Wahoo McDaniel right here, U.S. heavyweight champ. Wahoo.
That's right. You know, they became the world champions, and let me tell you something, Slaughter. I want you to notice I'm wearing red and white again. My Indian friends fixed me a new one, and I just like to show the people why I'm hot and why I am ready.
All right, and Wahoo, we got a tape of this right here.
I'm up here listening to you talk. You want to take John Flair? You want his belt? You want my belt? Well, there it is.
All right, Sergeant Slaughter fans, right out here. Here come the two privates, Private Kernodle and Private Nelson, and they hold Wahoo. And it's Slaughter who has got that headpiece and just tearing it all to pieces and slamming it all in Wahoo.
Belt around my waist, plus the man got a suspension 5 weeks at $1,000 a week. We hit him right where it hurt, right in the billfold. And Sergeant, I'm going to tell you something right now. We're going to meet somewhere, sometimes, and you know what's going to happen? I'm going to beat you.
All right, fans, and that's it right here at ringside.
And there we hear from the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, who is on a killing spree. You know, before it was Ivan Koloff, and they wanted to kill each other. And, you know, Joe Ledoux hasn't made any statements about killing the Boogeyman, although he most certainly looks like he could. But when you kill the music, you kill the Boogeyman's spirit, you kill the Boogeyman's heart, and he becomes a cold, cold man. Of course, we also heard from Jay Youngblood, Ricky Steamboat, as well as Wahoo McDaniel, who is still holding a grudge against Sergeant Slaughter for laying him out for so long. And as we know, as they mentioned, Sergeant Slaughter lost the U.S. Championship to Wahoo McDaniel. He got suspended for attacking him alongside the privates. That's what sent him to quote-unquote Hawaii, where he got really bored, I guess, from being in Hawaii and went over and went to Tokyo, Japan there. But Roman, Jimmy Valiant is still Jimmy Valiant.
Well, remember, he was the man that said he would rather lose an old lady than lose a boombox, you know, because he can't sleep. When the music's gone, he can't sleep, he can't eat, you know, he can't function. And, you know, on one of the episodes, he said he was up for 72 straight hours after they destroyed his boombox. But funny thing is that when hearing that reminded me of what my friend Terry Holbrook said when I was at the gathering. He said, Roman, you should have brought a broken boombox for Jimmy Valiant to sign and say that was the one that the heels destroyed and get him to autograph it. I thought that would have been funny. I wish I had thought of something like that. But yeah, quite the interviews there with Valiant, Steamboat, and Youngblood. They're hot on the heels of Slaughter and Kernodle. And then Wahoo with that VTR where they showed Slaughter and Kernodle and Nelson destroying the old headdress. And Wahoo said that Slaughter had been suspended. And what a coincidence. According to my notes, at that time when he was suspended, he was in New Japan Pro Wrestling, teaming with Ed Leslie, who would later go on to be Brutus the Barber Beefcake, and he also spent some time teaming with the Masked Superstar.
So next up, a $100,000 challenge match. Dory Funk Jr. against Keith Larson. If Larson can defeat Funk in 10 minutes or less, he takes the check that has been written from the Bank of Amarillo, Texas. Roman, we saw Dory Funk Jr. re-debut holding that check, saying he was bankrolling himself and wants competition that way, I guess all in the span of 10 minutes. Of course, this will lead to many things coming down the line here. But, you know, I was thinking as I was watching this, I've always had a great level of respect for Dory Funk Jr., but I was born in 1976, so my major parts of my fandom were really rooted in, you know, 84, 85, and so on. And that's when Dory Funk Jr. was mostly Hoss Funk. That was his highest profile role in the United States. If you weren't a collector of Japanese wrestling or Puerto Rican wrestling at the time, it was tough to really get a whole lot of Dory Funk Jr. So, you know, he was always talked about in magazines. He was a former NWA World Champion, which of course meant something at the time, and you always had to look at him with respect. But I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if I'm the last generation, the last eyes that has the ability to do that, because, you know, even at that point in 85, again, when you see him on WTBS and then later on in the WWF, it was just such a different style. And he was such a different performer, and he looked much older than he was. And, you know, I'm thinking to myself, even by this point in 1982, you know, I wonder if for younger fans, they really comprehend who this guy was. You know, Terry Funk, it was very easy. He was very in your face. Dory Funk was not.
Yeah, definitely different personalities. I mean, when you listen to Dory do an interview, you know, it sounded a lot like how Mike Rotundo was, you know, very bland, very calm. But, you know, when it came to in-ring action, Dory could go, obviously. You know, he knew how to work, and he can work snug. He could work scientific, and he was great to watch in the ring, but the promos weren't exactly the best. And like you said, by the time he got to the WWF, and, you know, they had the circus with Jimmy Jack Funk, who was Jesse Barr, and it just didn't have the same feel of like realism, I guess, if you want to call it that.
And in this match goes about 6.5 minutes or so and ends with Dory doing, again, you talk about something, a little understated. He went high on Larson when he was doing a leapfrog, which allowed him to clip Larson's leg and utilize the spinning toe for the finish. And then after the match, Mike Rotundo came in to make sure that Dory Funk Jr. didn't do any more damage to Keith Larson, which really, really upset number one Paul Jones, as you're going to hear right now.
And Larson high into the air, and Paul, I think he really hurt himself when he came down.
Well, this has got to be it.
That spinning toe hold.
Dory Funk there.
Well, he hurt his leg, and you saw Funk go right to that leg that was hurt. He went right to that leg to put that spinning toe hold on.
That's right.
And Larson says, yes, ring the bell. Funk had him high in the air. When he came down, he hurt that knee. And Larson,
look at Mike. What in the world would he be jumping in the ring like that for? He is not involved in this match. If I did that, people would write letters and complain and everything. But look at him.
Rotundo into the ring saying to Dory Funk Jr., come on, son, I want that money.
Look at
that.
Dory Funk jumped out of the ring to the floor, and that just goes to show you what a gentleman he is. Not causing a scene, not getting involved, and that makes Rotundo look like a complete idiot. Interfered. Now, look at Rotundo. Doesn't he look like an idiot in the ring by himself?
He didn't interfere, Paul. He went in to really challenge Funk. He wanted to challenge him to the match.
He was trying to jump him from behind.
Watch right here. There goes Larson down in slow motion. You'll see it. Funk comes off of the ropes. And Larson, he comes down hard on that knee and on that elbow. And the spinning toe hold right here put him away.
Tough break.
An idiot, says number one Paul Jones about Mike Rotundo running out there. And before we get to those comments from number one Paul Jones, Roman, one thing I neglected to mention as leading into that clip was Keith Larson's landing off of getting his knee clipped by Dory Funk Jr. on that leapfrog, because, he usually, when you see that spot, the person goes up, they're straight up in the air, they get clipped, and they will go to the side and sell the knee. Keith Larson, and the way he was going up, that guy was built like a fire hydrant. He was shorter than his brother was, and unfortunately, he was going head first, and frankly, could have broken his neck on that move. Forget about his knee.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. When I saw that, I go, my gosh, he just landed on his head, and then immediately he starts selling the knee. So I watched it again. It did look like his head hit the canvas. Maybe it didn't hit it solid, but just when you watch it in normal speed, it really looked like it could have broken his neck.
It was a nasty one, and we did nasty comments from number one Paul Jones on Mike Rotundo too, which certainly indicates that Paul Jones seems to certainly be moving towards a feud with young Mike Rotundo here, as Dory Funk Jr. continues to put more of his pieces into place behind the scenes in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. And after that, in lieu of local promos, we get some more filler time, this time with Ron Ritchie and Porkchop Cash, talking about their upcoming match with Joe LeDuc and Greg the Hammer Valentine. And the most notable part of this interview, I want everybody to listen to Bob and Porkchop, and you be the judge on whether Bob really is picking up what Chop is putting down.
Fans, Porkchop Cash, Ron Ritchie. Ron, you and Porkchop, boy, I tell you, we talk a lot about the House of Humperdink. It is growing. It continues to grow. And you're talking about rough individuals. You two have got two of them right there in the ring, and they are tough ones.
Well, sure, they're tough, but we don't consider ourselves pushovers neither. We're going up against Joe LeDuc and Greg Valentine here.
Tell them, Richard.
And tonight, a combination of pork chops and myself is something they haven't seen. Probably they haven't gone up against. So hopefully with our combination and our styles are different, so hopefully what we're going to throw at them tonight will be enough for us to come up with a victory.
What about the Sir Oliver Humperdink, Ron?
Well, you know, the man, take a man like Sir Oliver Humperdink, he's, you know, you have a tag team, you're wrestling two guys, and Humperdink's in there, it's like a third guy. He's always getting himself involved, he's always into something, and, you know, there's no doubt about it, the man is, you know, hard to keep a hold of, and he will trouble you.
Oh, I think Porkchop, do you sort of have him on the mind when you're in that ring?
Look, you got to have Humperdink on the mind anytime you wrestle on the Humperdink, man. But, you know, I figure when I'm in the ring, Richie can kind of keep his eye on Humperdink and whoever else stand outside the ring. Then if Humperdink stick his nose while I'm in there. If he stick it in that fur now, then brother, I will put this Africa soup bone on him and seeking I shorten it a little bit. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, ain't no doubt about that.
Yeah, you can't take nothing from Humperdink. He got a tough crew of fellas. And brother, me and Richard, we ain't trying to take nothing from him. But brother, we gonna give him a little something. You know what I mean? We gonna give him some knuckle sandwich. You understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You understand where I'm coming from?
Oh, yeah.
You know, now a lot of people, man, I'm gonna tell you. And brother, you never been hit until you hit with this Africa soup bone here, brother.
You got this big Canadian Joe LeDuc, this big Canadian lumberjack. There's a
But wait a
mountain
minute,
of a man.
a big man, right. But a little small axe will cut down a big tree. I don't care how big it is. So, brother LeDuc, I know you say you're big and strong, but if you miss one mistake, brother, you're mine.
Roman, I'm not 100% sure that when Bob said, "Oh, yeah, I know," I'm not sure he knew. Bob notably worked for Senator Jesse Helms for many, many years, and I'm not quite sure that Bob really understands what it's like to have the African soup bone come out and be laying and banging into dudes. You know what I'm saying?
And I did not realize how funny that was when I originally watched it till you played the clip and hearing it back again, and just Caudle's oh yeah, I know what you mean. I was thinking the same thing. Like, what does Caudle know about soup bones? But
as Jim Ross said about Bob Caudle, he is a white man in brown shoes, and Bob Caudle will never get the credit he deserves for being so unflappable, whether it be New Jack or Roddy Piper, or you name the amount of maniacs that have been screaming in his face about something or having these ridiculous situations played out in front of him over the years. Damn, you couldn't shake Bob Caudle for nothing.
For nothing. Even the greats like Gordon Soley would be, or, he'd have some kind of reaction, or Lance Russell, knock it off, Terry, knock it off. Bob, just anything could happen in front of him, and he just kind of like rolls with the punches. It's good old Uncle Bob.
Absolutely amazing. It really, really is. And of course, that set up Richie and Porkchop Cash jumping in there against Joe LeDuc, who is our Mid-Atlantic television champion, along with Greg the Hammer Valentine, with Sir Oliver Humperdink, the House of Humperdink, who can often take over television from week to week, all depending on who is there to carry the microphone. Match went a little under 7 minutes, ended with a LeDuc over-the-knee backbreaker. This match is notable for just the fact that LeDuc and Valentine beat the hell out of Richie and Cash, who can absolutely take it, as well as dishing back a little bit. There is an exchange with Cash and LeDuc, which is great. If you like two guys who are just hammering on each other, it ends with Joe LeDuc throwing one of the best damn drop kicks you've ever seen in your life. It is an offensive weapon. He immediately jumps up. He nails LeDuc, he nails Porkchop Cash. 1 foot in his face, 1 foot on his chest. In this battle back and forth, it's about as great of a shoot drop kick as you can get, or what is made to look like a shoot drop kick. I mean, you would not think to throw a drop kick in battle. We've actually seen it in mixed martial arts. It doesn't work and will usually lead to you getting your ass kicked. But the way LeDuc does it here, it works. And what really makes it work, Roman, for me, is the fact in the way that he lands and spins back up to his feet really fast. The whole sequence, and it's up on the Mid-Atlantic Pod Twitter. I'll repeat it. I'll make sure that I retweet it when this show is posted up there and a couple times during that week, because it is an outstanding offensive maneuver, and then he's back up into a defensive position. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, this match was a lot better than what I thought it would be going in, and that was one of the things I noted too, was that drop kick. Because let's face it, when you think of drop kicks, the name Joe LeDuc does not come to mind. You think of a Brunzell, a Coco Beware, Z-Man, whatever, Liger, but they came out of nowhere. The quickness, the precision, and I mean, he put that boot right on the mush of Porkchop Cash and just nailed him. And I was like, wow, where did that come from? And, this was a good match. And something that made me pop was we heard an old saying we hadn't heard in a while, Mike, and that's when Paul Jones says, this is when Valentine stopped Ron Ritchie right in his tracks, and Paul Jones says, that'll cut your water off in a hurry. And for those of you listeners to our podcast, you remember when Bob Caudle said that he would cut Roddy Piper's water off, and we joked about that. Maybe that's a saying down in the South or something, but I had never heard of that till we started doing this podcast. But that I took notes on, I thought was funny. And then you had mentioned the physicality. There was a spot in there too where Richie and Valentine got into like a 15-second chop fest. And I mean, it was kind of a physical match considering that, Porkchop and Ron Ritchie were underneath guys.
He's not forgotten as you start going through the list, but when people they start talking about guys who are traumatic to the chest, people immediately, Ric Flair, Ronnie Garvin, Wahoo McDaniel, Johnny Valentine, Walter, certainly many Japanese guys with Kensuke Sasaki or Kojima or whoever, now Minoru Suzuki, whoever you want to say. Greg Valentine sometimes is not one of those first names mentioned, but as you mentioned with Ron Ritchie, my God, the forearms to the chest, the elbows, the chops. I mean, brutal. And there was a reason that guy was known as the Hammer, and it wasn't just in the way that he would fall face first to the mat.
Yeah, this was a lot more physical contest than I had anticipated, which made it a little bit better contest, because the underneath guys actually got some shots in as well. It wasn't just one-sided. And then Ledoux finishing it off with the backbreaker, and I mean a snug backbreaker.
Yeah.
And, the more and more I watch Ledoux, the more I appreciate him. Because, growing up, I didn't see a lot of him. But, years later, through videotapes and, DVDs and YouTube and whatnot, you see him. I mean, what a menacing-looking figure, with the scars on his forehead. He's one of those guys that if you saw in an alley, you would run the other way, And the fact that he can do a drop kick like we talked about, and his moves look good. I mean, he was a very credible opponent.
Terrifying, always with gig marks in his head that were fresh, and those eyes, and just an absolute maniac who added that little extra to Humperdink's crew, of which he had, kind of in a lot of ways won everything. Leroy Brown, Greg Valentine, Paul Jones. It just a impressive unit. And as you mentioned, Ledoux wins with an over-the-knee backbreaker, and afterwards, they all join Paul Jones, and you'll notice a very noticeable edit on the WWE Network version, so I'm not sure what actually aired originally, or if there was a promo or whatever it was that aired before Paul Jones grabbed the microphone away from Bob Caudle as we closed the show with the bad guys letting you know what's going on, and sending a message to Wahoo McDaniel, one guy in particular, which of course is Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Bob, you just stay over there. This has to be the Humperdink hour, and this has to be handled with total class. Mr. Humperdink, welcome.
Thank you.
Let me say you one thing right now. A lot of people are starting to notice because a lot of people are telling me exactly what's going on. They say, Humperdink, his family's getting all the belts. They're getting all the recognition. More and more wrestlers are trying to sign with the Humperdink family.
That's exactly right, Paul. When Joe Ledoux came to this area, he came to this area for one express purpose, and that was to take care of Jimmy Valiant. And ladies and gentlemen, he's accomplished that task. You're looking at the new television champion, Joe Ledoux. And Joe, in your future, I see nothing but success. You're going to have that for a long, long time.
Thank you, Mr. Humperdink. Jimmy Valiant, I beat you for this belt. I beat you in the ring 1, 2, 3, and I was the winner. I was awarded this championship belt,
Amen.
TV title, because I am a better man, and it's been proven right on television. So now, Mr. Valiant, this belt is mine, and if you want it, I dare you to come and get it from me, because I'm the only one you're going to get it from. Nobody can beat me. Nobody can beat me for this much gold, because I count on it. I love it. I love the money, and I love pain. You may be able to dish out a lot of pain, but how much can you take? How much can you take, Valiant? Let's ask your people, your brothers and sisters. They may have to help you, but it won't do anything. It won't accomplish anything, because it's mine.
Very well put, Joe. Let me tell you one thing.
One thing for sure about Boogie Woogie Valiant, his fans that pull for him do not feel the pain that Valiant will receive.
Valiant doesn't know nothing about pain, but I'll tell you one man that does know about pain, and that's Wahoo McDaniels. And the man that inflicted the pain on Wahoo McDaniels is standing here with us right now. Greg Valentine, the prize of the collection. And soon, in the stars it's written, and nobody can change the stars, that U.S. belt will be around your waist, brother. I promise you.
Well,
That's
amen.
right.
That's for sure.
Humperdink promised Paul Jones he'd be the Mid-Atlantic heavyweight champion. Well, he is. He promised Joe LeDuc that he was going to be the TV champion. Well, he is a TV champion. Wahoo McDaniel, if you've got one gut in that gutless body of yours, you'll sign on that dotted line because you know that I'm right in line and I'm waiting. And let me tell you it's something else, Wahoo McDaniel. I'm the only man in professional wrestling today that ever put you out of wrestling and put you in a hospital. You remember that.
And there we hear from the House of Humperdink, Paul Jones holding the microphone. Leroy Brown not there this week, but Greg the Hammer Valentine, Joe LeDuc, victorious in their match over there to speak their piece about the Boogie Woogie Man, Jimmy Valiant, and Wahoo McDaniel, who Greg Valentine, of course, famously broke the leg of, put Wahoo out for, I believe, 71 days was the amount of time. And by the way, if that clip is up there over at Mid-Atlantic Pod as well, too, on the Twitter machine. But Roman, House of Humperdink, some weeks has taken over the show. I remember we were joking about that a couple weeks ago, when a couple episodes ago when they were on there and literally sucking up all the air. Oliver Humperdink was literally in almost every single segment. They gave everybody a break here and spaced it out a little bit, but the reality of the situation is he's got the dominant faction in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling.
Yeah, he's got the gold. He's got a couple wrestlers with gold, and he's promised that he'd help Valentine get gold as well. But, yeah, it's definitely good to spread it out a little bit because, it's one thing for Piper to dominate a show and be in 4 segments or something, but Humperdink, I don't think that's the best idea to go that route. So, space it out a little bit. I think it'll be a little more effective that way.
And we will actually have Roddy Piper on the show next week as well, coming up from Channel 17 in Atlanta. But Roman, time to put a bow on this show. Any closing thoughts you have on October 2nd, 1982?
This was an okay show. It wasn't the worst, but it was far from the best. But there was something to just kind of move along, a couple storylines here and there, and looking forward to what's coming down the pike. Because like you said, we know the road to Greensboro's coming up, and there's going to be some very exciting times in Mid-Atlantic.
Absolutely. We got the reestablishment of tag teams and the World Tag Team Championships belts. Kernodle and Slaughter as a team. Steamboat and Youngblood back together as a team. We have Dory Funk Jr. now moving forward with his $100,000 challenge as a singles quest for somebody. You got Leroy Brown out there looking to do some damage. Wahoo McDaniel, Greg Valentine for the U.S. title. Paul Jones with the Mid-Atlantic title. And Steamboat and Youngblood technically with the Mid-Atlantic tag team titles, but as we see, those will begin to be getting phased out. Now, over on Worldwide Wrestling, Dory Funk Jr. defeated Porkchop Cash. Greg Valentine defeated Mike Davis. Slaughter and Kernodle defeated King Parsons and Ron Ritchie. Steamboat and Youngblood defeated Nelson and Jim Dalton. And Jack Briscoe defeated Bill White. So that's what took place the same day for many people over on Worldwide Wrestling in the show that was taped immediately after Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling back on Wednesday, September 29th. And before we wrap up the show, I'll take you around the horn with results.
Let's take time for this commercial message about the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling events coming up in your area.
We start off on Thursday, September 30th, and according to the Clawmaster archives, we have the same card taking place in both Harrisonburg, Virginia at the Harrisonburg High School and South Hill, Virginia at Parkview High School. So I'm not sure if they had maybe an afternoon rally and then a nighttime show. I'm not sure exactly what the deal is there. It may just be a case of mistaken location, possibly. But King Parsons and Ron Ritchie defeated the Privates. Ricky Steamboat defeated Leroy Brown. And Joe LeDuc defeated Jimmy Valiant, and that is the case on both shows listed. The Harrisonburg show has got more detailed results including the fact that Joe LeDuc defeated Jimmy Valiant by disqualification, as well as match times. Also on Thursday, September 30th, in Weldon, North Carolina, Johnny Weaver drew with Gene Anderson. Jay Youngblood and Mike Rotundo defeated Greg Valentine and Sergeant Slaughter by disqualification, and Jack Briscoe defeated Paul Jones. On Friday, December 1st, in Charleston, South Carolina at County Hall, Paul Jones defeated Jack Briscoe. Sergeant Slaughter and Private Kernodle defeated Jay Youngblood and Johnny Weaver. Porkchop Cash defeated Private Nelson. Keith Larson drew with the Scorpion, and Ken Thames defeated Ali Bay. Also on Friday, October 1st, in Richmond at the Coliseum, Wahoo McDaniel defeated Greg Valentine. Ricky Steamboat defeated Leroy Brown, and Joe LeDuc defeated Jimmy Valiant. On Saturday, October 2nd in Culpeper, Virginia, Ricky Steamboat defeated Leroy Brown by DQ, and Paul Jones defeated Jack Briscoe. On Sunday, October 3rd in Greensboro, Wahoo McDaniel defeated Sergeant Slaughter by DQ, which was also the reason that Wahoo McDaniel mentioned Slaughter in his promo on the Saturday show. Paul Jones defeated Jack Briscoe, Mike Rotundo defeated Joe LeDuc, and Ricky Steamboat went to a double countout against Greg Valentine. On Sunday, October 3rd in Toronto at Maple Leaf Gardens, and I'll give you the whole card for this one as it's a interesting mix of WWF stars and old Mid-Atlantic guys. Abe Jacobs defeated Ken Hall. Tony Parisi and Nick DiCarlo defeated the Destroyer Dick Beyer and Rick Connors. Salvatore Bellomo defeated Jose Estrada. Playboy Buddy Rose defeated Tony Gurria. Private Kernodle and Private Nelson defeated Leroy Burke and Johnny Weaver. Jimmy Valiant defeated Ivan Koloff in a Russian chain match, and WWF champion Bob Backlund defeated Bob Orton Jr. Also on Sunday in Savannah at the Civic Center, Wahoo McDaniel went to a double disqualification against Greg Valentine. Paul Jones defeated Jack Briscoe, and Ricky Steamboat defeated Leroy Brown by disqualification. On Monday, October 4th in Greenville at Memorial Auditorium, Jay Youngblood defeated Joe LeDuc by DQ, and Wahoo McDaniel defeated Sergeant Slaughter, while up in Brantford, Ontario, the Maple Leaf Wrestling card ran with Jim Crockett guys as well, although we don't have a card for that show. On Tuesday, October 5th in Raleigh at the Civic Center, Mike Rotundo defeated Dory Funk Jr. by reverse decision, and Private Kernodle and Sergeant Slaughter drew with Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood 60 minutes in the first match between the teams. On Tuesday, October 5th in Columbia, South Carolina at Township Auditorium, Leroy Brown defeated Johnny Weaver, Jimmy Valiant defeated Joe LeDuc, and Jack Briscoe and Jerry Briscoe defeated Paul Jones and Greg Valentine. And that takes us around to Wednesday, October 6th, back at the WPCQ studios in Charlotte, North Carolina. And here's the WWE Network preview for next week. October 9th, 1982. NWA World Tag Team Champion Sergeant Slaughter and Don Kernodle face Ron Ritchie and Porkchop Cash. That was the extent of the preview, but I can let you know that also on the show will be Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood, Roddy Piper, Wahoo McDaniel, Jack and Jerry Briscoe, Mike Rotundo, Dory Funk Jr., the whole House of Humperdink, Jimmy Valiant, and more. As I mentioned earlier on, if you like this show and would like to connect with it more, I invite you to follow us on all of our forms of social media, especially our Twitter. Just search @MidAtlanticPod and look for the logo. And also, please support all of the shows here on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. We don't condescend, and we are dedicated to preserving and accurately archiving the history of professional wrestling. And I'm proud that this show, produced by me, can be a part of that. For Roman Gomez, I'm Mike Sempervive. Take us home, Uncle Bob.
Yes, that'll do it for this week. See you next week, and until then, so long for now.